So then, we are back with more understandings from the Renewed Covenant, from the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation is from the original manuscripts of the Hebrews of old, the prophets of Israel, giving us understanding of the time of the end. We understand from the manuscripts of Yeshayahu. We are then in the 61st chapter, where then the rebuilding takes place, or the renovation, or the renewal, or the restoration. Then we did evaluate these cities, and then the city, and then the relationship with the city and the cities, based upon then the understanding of the first service and the second service, and the relation with those, and then concerning Israel and its outcome and their obedience. We understand per Scripture Israel won't be obedient. The reason why we know this, it's because when you read Revelation, the 11th chapter, you find then the prophet given a rod and measuring the temple. It does indicate the rebuilding of the temple. However, he said, do not then measure outside, because those were given to the Gentiles. If you begin to analyze the Scripture very precisely, then you'll find a Palestinian state. So then we understand per Scripture the plan is holy in terms of the 61st chapter of Yeshayahu. We find the city, we find the cities. We find then ourselves during a time where then China is going to be the market leading country because of its cheap materials and cheap cargo. But those were then foretold because they're going to be making deals with a very troublesome nations, while then they are taking over the security of the Middle East, so then we can retrieve and rebuild. And then, great more than these, we understand how to read those holy prophecies per layers of understanding. So then, we had a great debate last night. It was very interesting. And then we have then the understanding also of Yeshayahu, the earlier chapter 1:8, speaks then of this place where then Yahweh himself tabernacling amongst very fierce people. We understand the place beyond the rivers of Ethiopia as the Congo. And the Congo, as we understand, they have lots of minerals. One of the richest countries in this planet. So then also we understand last night, while then there was the debate of the presidential debate, then came the topic of manufacturing. And as usual then the fake GOP candidate came up with the idea of having manufacturing in our country. And having crazy ideas of manufacturing without explaining what kind of a political plan he has. He went around the plan. What plan do you have that you're going to make so many cuts and then yet place our economy on a positive side? He couldn't answer it. So are we going then to trust a candidate with a miracle plan without knowing what the plan is? So the other ideas and the other plans and the other subjects are non-relevant, because the main core of understanding of the fixing of the economy, then it's a mystery. Nobody knows what it is, and we can't trust and go back to the old ways. We must remain this new era where we understand then the true Scripture, we understand where we stand with the holy prophets, and we understand also the great role that Congo and then our country is going to play out. In other words, we understand that at the end of the debate, then very wisely the president simply mentioned, we won't be able to compete with the cheap market of China. Of course, the candidate didn't know it. And then they're going to invest some of the resources from the government in teaching then those people, the vocational people, of higher scientific equipment. In other words, higher level of education regarding areas of the market related with equipment, and those obviously they require rare materials. So then you begin to link up the points. You have then the prophecy related with the Yeshayahu is speaking of the place beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Speaks of the rebuilding of the cities and then tabernacling amongst fierce people. So then, last night we have the great chance of understanding then the plan of our market, but related with a high level of production of equipment and new technologies. Those new technologies, they require rare materials. So then a strong friendship with our president and the president of Congo is going to provide us with these rare materials while they are in the ground. Coltan and then the other types of materials very much required for high technological machines. So the plan is working perfectly. We must then maintain our focuses and then make sure we understand then the plan of the end. As we understand the cheap labor market, we won't be able to beat. But as the high level scientific equipment then is generated and then produced, then vocational places also in Africa could be used as a means for them to grow up with us. Because the main developer of these new technologies then can be used in Africa. As we rebuild, they rebuild with us. Not obviously in the same level, but then at least they have a vocational they can start working on. So it came in perfectly on time. So it shows there is truly a creator, but it's not the creator of the GOP candidate. Because GOP candidate, he has no idea what the plan of the divine is. The main core of his political plan, he couldn't even explain it. And he was asked, what is this plan that you have that is so miraculous, so to speak, yet he can't say what it is. And then any other subject then becomes non-relevant. Because when you can't explain what you're going to do then with those cuts and how you're going to make up for those, and then at the same time leveling our economy and then growing the economy, it's the main engine of the entire political plan, and he couldn't explain it. What is he trying to do? To deceive the entire nation, thinking they can, from the edges, then working around, and then the main core then is defective. Would you have a very nice, important truck load up with rare materials, and then you discover then he's no engine? You turn on the ignition and no engine in the truck. And he was asking a specific understanding. What you were saying then, from what you have gathered, what is the plan in order to make your plan to work? He couldn't answer it. So there is no plan. He's lying. In a crucial moment of then people making a decision, he couldn't explain it. And he was not aware of that in Africa is extremely rich in rare materials, and what it takes for our country then is investing in new technologies related with these rare materials, so then we can make a deal. And then he said, oh, he knows so much of manufacturing. He knows of trade and how to fix the economy. What is the plan? He couldn't answer it. And then crack down on China because they are not playing by the rules and blah, blah, blah. Part of it is true. But then what is the plan to make his case justifiable? He couldn't answer it. Whatsoever came afterward is not relevant. And then precisely what the president said and fits with the entire plan. Working in new technologies, making sure people are educated, and then the government helping those learning centers so they can get educated for a higher pay and then higher technologies. For those, has to have rare materials. And then Africa has tons of them. This GOP candidate is done away with. He doesn't understand the market. He takes a plan to make the market to work. Then he speaks of manufacturing, he speaks then in making cuts, he speaks then of the military and every other area. And then when it comes to the core, what is the plan? Nobody knows. The indication is he's trying to put the nation back in the old junkies. Because as we understand precisely, the people of the government try to make this president a scapegoat. Try to measure the understandings of the situation. There it was, the previous government, and then piling up debt, piling up debt, piling up debt. Of course, the gasoline was very cheap, but then the price of piling was much higher than the price of the gasoline. Then had a change of the government. They tried to use them because he's half black person. Let's make this person then pay for the entire debt, and then we get farther down, and then we blame him after 40 years. But the very evil they were making a plan against him is turning against them. What is the plan? So then he was talking big of education and speaking of his plan of having more manufacturing and speak of cracking down in China. What is the plan to make those plans then come to place? Couldn't answer it. So it's a lie. It's a plain lie. Miserable, putrefied lie. He's loading up his truck and he finds out he has no engine. You should explain step by step his plan of government, because then people, they have the certainty, boy, this guy has a plan, then we vote for him. But people don't know what the plan is. And then those numbers given by the president were then searched from independent companies. Those are not from the scoundrels of the government. And also we understand part of the problems generated in this government were generated in purpose. Only because then the government itself, because of the combat going on over there with the skin color, they generated problems to make the worst case ever in this government, so they would blame the president as a scapegoat. But it's turning against them. Yahweh is watching from above, and then he is making the proper steps. The evil that they plan for the president is going against them. And we must ask precisely, what is the plan of the GOP candidate? He doesn't have a plan. He does not have a plan. In any decent government, people must know what plan is so then they can make a decision. He doesn't have any plan. So their plan is a plan of blame. They want to blame the black guy because they are incompetent. But then this evil is turning against them. So then the excitement part of it, then we understand this candidate is no position whatsoever. He doesn't. He's simply out of it. There is no politic around the world in terms of having the highest seat and then people being mesmerized not knowing the plan. If you consider them voting for this candidate GOP, then you are stupid. What else can a person say? Are you going to trust then they're going to load up the entire riches of our country, and then you put the driver in the seat and then you find out there is no engine? People don't know what the plan is. They have big numbers going on around, and they promise, oh, we have a plan how to take care of it. No, he does not have a plan. He's mesmerizing the people because they want to make the black people then the scapegoats. And then he excuses, oh, because we had to do this because of what the previous president did, and then goes the blame again. Where is the engine? So the evil they intended for the president is turning against them. Those numbers given by the president were taken from independent sources. They don't go along with those junkies of the government. So then let's ask the GOP candidate, what is the plan? So far we are hearing marvelous words of cracking down China, and then trying to control the market, and then trying to control our technologies. Those are wonderful. And then speaks of the government with such eloquency. Oh, he understands trade. Oh, yes, he does understand. He had then trades in the past. What is the plan? He doesn't have any plan. You know what he has? Blame. He's going to make up whatsoever he can when he get up there, and then whatsoever blame he finds in any problem, then he blames the previous president. That's his plan. It's evil. But then, the people with the votes in their hands, they're going to realize then the GOP candidate doesn't have any plan. So they are trying to load up the entire country in this big truck and let's go forward. And then no engine. Everybody out of the truck and go back to work if you find it. Not understanding the times and the seasons. Try to understand we are doing the time of rebuilding. Per scripture of the old Hebrews of old, the prophets of Israel, we understand we are during the time of restoration. When you understand times of restoration, what comes to your mind? Building, materials, restoration. In terms of a country such as China, it's going to take the lead of the market because it's so cheap. But it was meant that way because then the country is in trouble at the moment in Europe, because the euro is breaking, we understand. And then companies over there, they have to make a deal with China. There is no other option because they have cheap equipment. And some of them are so much in trouble they have to use their own natural resources in the basis of exchange. While then the cargoes are escorted by the military, and that's our clue then to get out of there. So then we can rebuild ourselves and then save our resources. And then, obviously, we are speaking of high technological equipment and new technologies, then requires rare materials. Do you have stockpile of rare materials? Because we have to be realistic. We are not going to be able to go against China with regular labor. It's insanity. We can't compete with them. That's why it was said before, this government must remain quietly very quietly and calmly, maintaining its pace along the way and making very tiny but consistent decisions. And the plan came out perfectly. The only point this GOP candidate can do is to give up the presidency because he has no plan. If he is worth something, he should give up. He has no plan. He's mesmerizing the minds of the people because people are weak. People that don't understand the market, they don't understand what's going on in the world. It is childish think we can go against the labor of China. He's absolutely insane. How we are going, when a country that can order thousands of ships with raw materials, if they can come up with labor, we can produce then a telephone, they produce 100. They are using students as regular workers. We can barely come around of our own laws. In terms of if we were to compete with those people. Because our laws are very steady in terms of protection of the workers. Over there it's not the same. Then are we going to compete with them? No, we are not going to compete with them. You must remain realistic. You must invest in high technological equipment requiring rare materials. Where do we find? Africa. Where is it located at? Congo. Isn't that beyond the rivers of Ethiopia? Please stay tuned. Much more coming up.